I thought, here's a good question. Which city gets more rainfall? Raleigh or Seattle? Raleigh. What? Last I checked, I was sure of this, and so I might be wrong, but I checked this because I was like, we obviously get way less. But no, it was like a little more. Right? You're like, what are you talking about? That's crazy talk. It is.
I was about to say Seattle too.
I think it's Raleigh. Let me see. Let's check. 46 inches in Raleigh. 37 inches in Seattle. What? Size of Wyoming, 97,000 square feet, or square miles. Yeah, good job. North Carolina, let's see. Yeah, it's almost twice as large. With a population of, we've got 10 million. Wyoming has not quite 600,000. Oh, it's about 3 times as large. The Raleigh, the rectangle. Yes, it's a perfect rectangle, yes. Or close to it, really close. It was like what was left after everyone else took their space. Why are we starting with Wyoming facts? What else do I have? Wyoming is known as the equality state because it was the first state to grant women the right to vote. That's right, it's a very progressive state. You know why it gave women the right to vote? It's debated why, but there's a couple arguments. One is because by giving women the right to vote, there were enough people to vote for it to become a state. Otherwise, there wouldn't be enough. And the other was because there was like a 10-to-1 ratio of men to women in the state, and they thought by giving women the right to vote, it would encourage more women to move to Wyoming. They also had the first, I think was it the first state Supreme Court justice or something like that, I believe, who was a woman for a state. So, it wasn't just totally, yeah. And now they're totally not, so. I mean, I love Wyoming. They're just very independent-minded. So we were talking about cities. Let's keep on a sidetrack for a minute. Here's my random thing that I was going to show you. This is some research that somebody did on the directionality of different cities' roads. So they looked at, you can see here, if you will. Oh, do I have a laser? I don't know if I do. Oh, here's a laser. This is why I liked visiting Denver recently. Because I could get on any road and go north or south and just get on another crossroad. It all made sense. It was like, oh, I don't have to get back to the exact same way that I went because they all go the same way. Here's North Carolina. We're not very good at keeping roads going in some sort of structured way. I think Raleigh-Durham is right up there. Boston's nuts. Here's some others if you want to see some let me see. We've got a lot more here.
It's super easy to navigate.
Except London's horrible. Paris is bad.
Here, like I said, you got the curve. It looks like here, and then the road ends on here.
Yeah. Exactly. The roads go all over the place.
One side of the road is like certain residents or school or certain street where you're at.
Right.
Actually, states, and then that's a lot of states, a lot of Philadelphia. And then the other part of it is numbers.
That's Denver for you, right?
Yeah.
There was one time I had to visit someone in Denver, and they were down on like 16th or something, and I was on like 42nd, and I was like, oh, this is a simple problem. I'm just going to turn left and drive like 20 some blocks, and I'm done.
Super, I know exactly where that is. I know the votes. I do how many. That's correct.
All right. There's our little completely unrelated sidetrack today. So, all we're really focusing on today, I want to make sure nobody's starting behind, right? So I posted this, I mentioned it at the end of the last class, I posted it earlier, is I want to make sure everybody's able to start up an application using Create React App by the end of the class today. That's in whatever environment you prefer to use, but the one I'm going to walk through for our video. Oh, I don't think I posted the link for people who are remote. Let me post this real fast. So nobody's watching it.
I think that's in your conversation with Daisy.
Oh, geez, thank you. Look, I'm a horrible person. I need to move stuff around. What am I doing? All right. This is what I look like I don't know what I'm doing. All right. But I appreciate you correcting me. So yeah, the goal here will just be making sure everybody can get spun up with the Create React App environment. Now, after following up with them, I did learn that you guys should have gotten invitations to set up AWS Cloud9 education environments. So that's what I'm going to use, although you don't have to do that. If you want to do it on your local system, you can do that. It might mean that you'll have some of your own unique challenges that we'll have to work through. But I'm going to make sure that we at least record this setup because it'll be something that anyone who follows in the same sort of environment should be able to do. All right, so I had to create my own because I did not get the same link, but that's okay. I just set up my own AWS account. It's been updated at least, so it's newer, like dependencies and stuff installed, but it should be close to the same environment. Hopefully this doesn't take too long to connect. So this is a completely fresh Cloud9 environment. I haven't even tried out the steps yet to see what will and won't work because I wanted to make sure that I'm sort of doing this live with you guys as opposed to having worked through everything. But again, the goal would be to be able to spin up a very basic React application using something like the Create React App, which is what we'll be leveraging in the class for the most part. So I'm going to do this create a new React application bit. I'm not going to use NPX just because I know that I'll probably be creating more than one React application. So NPX, if you remember, we toyed with this a little bit in one of the classes. That's a way to run something from the NPM, like a package, without installing it. Let me check and see if there's anything. I don't think there's anything we need here. So all right, yeah, I'll go through this create a new React application one. This is basically what I want us to be able to accomplish. So instead, I'm actually going to install it. So the command will be just slightly different, where I'm going to install it globally in my environment. We've got the environment down here. This is probably going to be a little small for anybody. I cannot. What's that? You could do this in Git Bash on your local system if you're doing that as well.
Should we do it globally?
So the general advice, like, let me just set this out, is for the most part, you don't want to be installing NPM packages globally. However, having said that, there's sort of two categories of NPM, or more than two, but two big broad categories. There's packages that you're going to use inside of a program, like JavaScript libraries and things that you'll use to build something. And then there's ones that are essentially installing command line applications on your computer that you can invoke anywhere. And so when you've installed them globally, the ones you install globally and the only ones you should ever do with that are the ones that you would essentially be using command line applications that you might call anywhere. Even then, you still want to try and minimize it because, I mean, it's not a big deal. You probably won't run into any issues, but in the long run, they'll get out of sync and stuff. But it's not the hugest problem. So I try and minimize what I install globally, but I do tend to just install the Create React app because it pulls down a lot of stuff when it pulls it down, and it just saves me when I use it the next time. I don't have to wait the, depends on what my network connection is, like 1 to 5 minutes to have it pull everything down usually. All right, can this zoom?
Cloud9 is something we have to do in every environment, or is it once you install it in one environment, it's just install it?
It should, so in any given Cloud9 virtual machine, you would have to do this. So if you spin up another Cloud9 instance, you would need to do it. But if you were just reconnecting to one that you've already created, like one space, then you shouldn't need to reinstall anything because it should already be there. Maybe I swear I could zoom this before. I just need to try and figure out if I'm. Zoom. Just trying to make it a little larger for other people, but I don't know if I'm going to be able to get it there. No, that's not what I want. Isn't there a magnifying glass on a Mac? No. Maybe there isn't. I thought there was a way to magnify on a Mac too, but I don't know. All right, well, I can probably do it here at least. Yep, that'll work. So the first thing is just installing the Create React app, right? So this is npm-g is saying you're going to install it globally. And then what I want to do is install. So then I can just type, is it -I for install as well? And then Create React app. Yeah, I'm going to walk through the steps for the most part, and then I will sit down with individual people and do hands-on if they're need extra steps to get there, because I want to make sure that this is sort of condensed in case somebody wants to go back and look at it as a reference.
Alex is asking if we need the latest versions of Node in the.
So that's a good question. I mean, I'm assuming, you guys can let me know if this is different, but I checked real fast when I spun up my Cloud9 instance, at least for Node and NPM versions. These are pretty new versions of the two tools. So I think this 10.16 is the latest long-term support version of Node. And I'm not sure if this is the latest NPM, but that used to be a big problem on the old Cloud9 environment where they had very outdated versions of them installed. So this should alleviate that issue significantly, the fact that the AWS Cloud9 is a newer environment. So I think that should avoid that, but.
We can do these same steps and get back and work on it.
Oh, it's just I, it's not -I. Yes, you can do them the same locally. The one thing you might need to do, let me see. The one thing you might need to do that we didn't have to do inside of the Cloud9 environment is you probably need to make sure that you've installed Node.js if you haven't already done that. And then you can run them locally. Wow, that was actually blazingly fast.
I should invite you to make a directory for environment.
No, you can, that's a good question. You can do it wherever you sort of want to be working. When it installs globally, Node or NPM already has a folder that it installs it to. It doesn't matter where you're at in your command line at that time. It won't change where it installs it. But when you run Create React app, you're going to want to make sure that you're in the correct folder that you want to work in. So if you're working on a local system, what like my tendency is I have like a development folder or a repositories folder. I usually call mine development. On my work system, it's like development repos. But yeah, you're gonna wanna make sure that when you actually invoke create React app that you're in the right location for what you're spinning up, if that makes sense. But when you're installing it, it doesn't matter. Good question. Any more, feel free to ask, because we're just working through this together right here. All right, so it looks like it installed it really quickly on this. I am going to bring this back up so that we're not at the bottom of the screen. And now that I've done that, let's switch back over. Now it says like create, now we're going to call create React app, because before this line was both creating it and, you know, pulling down the dependencies, but we're gonna just call create React app, and we can call it whatever we want, but it's basically just gonna be like a hello world. And it's gonna create an extra folder for that within the folder that you're currently in. So if you see here, we're in environment, which is a little confusing because environment is the same as this React course. If you look up here, you can see it's home EC2 user environment. So that's actually where we're at, which is why you see the README up there, or if I list files here, you see it. And so right from here, I'm gonna call create React app, and we can call this whatever we want. I'm just going to call it test, because I'm just sort of testing that this is all working right now. It's a very weird look. And now it's going to go pull down all of these tools that it needs to spin up your React application. So this itself is going to take quite a while, because this is where a lot of dependencies are getting installed for you. Create React app will take care of that for you in terms, as long as, so that's one of the reasons, oh man, this is so much easier now that this exists. It used to be a whole process of teaching people like, okay, here's all of this tooling that you have to have for React, and here's all, and all of that still exists. There's all of this tooling behind the scenes, which we'll talk about later, but Create React app hides it all from you right now so that you can just use Create React app and just use their start, and until you need to do something that doesn't work within their, you know, sandbox, you get to play in this nice, easy land. And then when you need to break out of that, it becomes tooling nightmare. You can, but it still is hidden a lot of that from you, right? So now if we're at this point, and I know a lot of people aren't going to be here again, the point of this is sort of walk through this in a video fashion, and then I'll sit down and just be here for the rest of the class period for anybody who wants the hands-on work working through getting this set up. So now we should have this test, or whatever you named it. Let me zoom in on this too, so it's a little larger. There we go. So the next thing is to just move into that directory and use npm start, which is going to run that React application and just make sure that it's working. So I'm going to scroll this down a little bit, because we're actually going to want to, actually I guess we don't yet. We're going to want to see stuff in a minute. So let's move, I'll move into the test folder. And what you'll see is it nicely even, if I list everything, it even created a Git repository for us. So it's already done the Git process of creating Git and all of that. So it really covered a lot of the bases that we don't have to do manually. And in here we can do npm start and cross our fingers. This should start the development environment. It should tell us, all right, here we go. We can access this. And then if I try this, it probably won't work.
That's so weird.
So I just found something, if you're a Mac user and you are, I would recommend first going to the directory or using the user. Or it's just gonna put it into your users directory.
Before you, oh, if you do npx, yes.
Yeah, you have to first go to the location of where you want the files to be.
Yes.
And
It's when you invoke create React app that you want to be in the right folder. I did npm, I installed it first and then I called it. So that's why that first step in mine, I didn't care where I was at. And then the second step, I needed to be in the right folder.
I confused it, I confused
Look at this. These URLs are definitely not externally accessible. So I'm going to have to figure this out, which we did before. So let me see if this will work. That will not work. All right. This is the challenge of doing something live, but I wanted to make sure I didn't have everything worked out. I just didn't expect this to be the problem.
Alright, so once we get the cool
See, look at that. You got it working. This is a Cloud 9 problem. This is a result of work running in Cloud 9, where I know I would have it working locally. I mean, I do development locally, but again, when you're teaching a class, it becomes a challenge because you then have to deal with, you know, that many different environments and unique problems.
like with my Visual Studio Code, oh dear Lord, doing that in the framework properly, we had to like install NPM on my what? My computer wasn't allowing me to use it at all. We had to like go into like admin settings, yeah, like we'll have to like go in and like force cat stuff into my computer and it was like a 2 hour thing.
The only problem I
All right, let's see what we have here.
There's like an update on Visual Studio, but then each person can create that extension.
I can't even get a I have to.
I'll save it.
That's the app, yes. You open that, you do LS or CE test and go there.
Now, 10 games or
It should have when we did create, we did, when we did,
Oh, this is so ugly.
create dash, we got dash. That should have made that. And then you do a CE to test, and then you do an LS test.
All right. I'm going to close that and close this. We're going to give this a try again. HTTP, you're not going to work. This is an interesting new challenge that I haven't had before. All right. Has anybody solved this within Cloud9 yet?
It should be opening up the secondary window, which is not.
Yeah. Even if I do that, it gives me the same result.
And it just goes up, after you do the ending start, and it also makes it functionality. But it doesn't feel like.
It does down here, but these aren't going to work because of the way that Cloud9 works, unless you open them within this environment, because these are all only locally addressable paths. And then if I do open it in a preview window, it Gives me this nice, horrible, long message. I'm gonna get rid of that. I'm gonna go to the end here. I don't think this will work, but we're gonna try it.
So I have one. I have one.
And it's like those little things that are like,
Then also that it is fiber optic over thing, because they use fiber. Okay, fiber optics.
you tell me.
Their stuff.
I didn't learn all of it. I didn't learn it. I totally got it.
All right, let's see.
Oh, no, it was really. Yeah, so I just took out my old.
Yeah, back in like, so we're
Yeah, I mean, like, it's the whole box. It's pretty. Watch YouTube. Yeah, I put it on fire. I don't know. I might have been.
Oh my gosh. Welcome to the nightmare that is AWS. What? I'm gonna try and figure out if there's an easy way to do it. But by default, it looks like a lot of steps. It's a web security problem because they only load an HTTPS page, but it doesn't have a proper HTTPS certificate by default, and it won't serve up that way. It's possible to just get it configured correctly, but it might take me a little bit of time to figure out the right configuration options.
Okay, so now unless we're doing it locally, we're not gonna be able to see.
Well, I'm working on it. I'm going to try and get an answer, hopefully. But we're going to see what that looks like.
Yeah.
What were you saying about installing locally on there?
When you install locally, you have to first call, or you first have to take it right
You have to, configure ours, our copy series.
So, see, you are right now in here. I'm assuming you're gonna put it on. See, like, if you guys don't have that on, because you guys can go to wherever it's located easily, but in that, it's kind of complicated. Alright, it's like, why? That's how I feel.
I may have to change the way this.
But first you want to go to that. Yes.
Oh, I think I see what I have to do. This won't be fun for people, but let's see. Shouldn't be that bad.
Yeah, I remember you were saying, right, you're back here.
Yeah, I already went through that problem. How'd it go? Close. How you feel, like? Huh? How you feel? I mean, not better. I've been, like, I'm in an internship right now, so all my stress is in that. That's the only thing I'm.
All right, let me see
You're
here.
always stressing basketball. Yeah, sure, why? Exactly. Now my stress is all in one place.
See, that's what I'm ready for, I'm ready for this kind of thing, that I can just start at, finish getting the big source stuff, it's actually.
I mean, technically, but.
Oh,
These
yeah.
automation is like that works. I mean, it's super duper interesting, right? I mean, like I'm working in like. I'm working in the pharmaceutical.
It's gonna work.
I'm dealing with like people who are creating medicine. So it's like cool, super cool that I'm learning a lot of like science and stuff. And I actually like walking in like labs and seeing how like certain medicines are being made and a lot of that stuff. And my job is to basically kind of IT work with big machines. Yes. Yes. I'm good at it.
Did you see the little spinning screen?
That's awesome. When you change directory into, it's called my company. Oh.
There you go.
Hmm.
Is there anything else we need to
Yes, I was like.
Okay, I'm not very good. This will be good too, if that's not at home, that will be solid and healthy for us, that way if you're installing it on the machines, you'll have it.
Oh, this is even worse.
If you're helping them install those things on the machines, have it so when you go forward, it's solid. That way you don't have like.
I think this whole one is kind of. One thing about college. I was gonna say like, oh, I'm like. I feel like I'm lying. I feel like I'm.
See, that's another reason why I want to do it, it's like, it's not everything.
But like it's better because the stress I need on myself, I'm doing it. No other person is reading that, but so I'm thinking that like I decided to keep it like a heartache, like super hard. I don't really want hard. Yeah, I don't know, like my mechanics are not really metal, but I put some roots and that's like pretty cool, like quite holiday.
All right.
So like do some really cool like mechanics.
Hey, I got it. All right. Now, I realized for anybody following along in the video, I wasn't walking through stuff. So what I'm going to do, for the sake of anybody else who's using the Cloud9 environment, is I will probably try and make a short video, maybe tomorrow, of just these steps. I'll walk through it right now to show you what I did to get there, because it's a lot of AWS things and it's not really Cloud9. So we're sort of going to jump through some hoops, but I'm going to try and make a more condensed one as well. So here's what I ended up jumping through to get there. All right, we're going to back up a little bit and give you a tiny background on how AWS works. So AWS is a huge collection of services, and one of them is a virtual machine service that runs like virtual computers, and that's known as EC2. So the first thing I did was go up and look for this EC2 service, because Cloud9 is actually just an EC2 instance. Any Cloud9 environment you're running is an EC2 instance running. So if you're on your own system, you should, or your own account, you should only see probably one running instance unless you've done other stuff, in which case it's going to be your Cloud9. And the name's going to be pretty visible. Oh, here's my AWS Cloud9 system. Let me zoom in on this. Again, if you guys want, I can make a more focused video of this as well, but now with that, I guess you can't really see everything down there when I zoom in that much. So once you're selected the system or the virtual machine that's actually running your Cloud9 instance, again, I'll walk people through this by hand as well, because this is something you should only need to do once per system, but anybody who's on video, I want them to get a chance. Now, there's a couple things you'll need to do. One is get your public DNS address, which will be listed down here in this description, and it even has a nice convenient copy button. So you can either get that or your public IP address. Either one of those should work. But the more important part is you need to go to the security groups for the inbound security groups and click into that. Because that shows you what, then we'll click over to the inbound tab on that. I know there's a lot going on here. But what that'll show you is what address ranges are allowed to talk to this server or allowed to call into it. And by default, it only had these SSH ones. And what I did to get it working was I added these port 8080, because that's the port that Create React app automatically uses when it first runs. And I said, port 8080 should be able to be accessed on my virtual machine instance for inbound connections. I saved that, which then the computer figured it out, with a little bit of time. And then let's back up again. I took this public DNS address, although in my case I used the IP address, but we can switch to the DNS because that will stay the same, whereas the IP won't all the time. And I just tacked on that :8080 to it. So if you went back and looked at what you spun up down here, you'll see, oh, on your network, it's HTTP, blah, 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 this IP address, :8080. You basically just replace everything before that colon with the public DNS address for your system, and then the colon, and then it should be accessible. That might also, let me try this. I don't know if this will work at all or not, but we'll see. That might make stuff accessible in here if we change this to, say, HTTP. It doesn't look like, yeah, I know. I wasn't sure if it would now be accessible after making that other change from here or not, but it looks like it still isn't. And then you're not gonna be able to just click on that link down there, unfortunately, because a 172 address, this is just one of those things you end up learning over time. IP addresses are how you identify computers on the internet, right? It's like your home address, except there's also addresses that are only allowed to be routed inside. So imagine that's like, if you want a comparison, that's like saying, oh, the postman can deliver mail to your house, but he doesn't know how to deliver mail to a room in your house. And some addresses only apply to a room. 172 is sort of like this is only in my room address. The public DNS. What I did was I went back to my cloud, not my Cloud9, but my AWS account. So any page on the AWS account, I went into the EC2 service. So if you search services, it's probably always like the first one up here because it's the most used service on AWS by a long shot. And then I found my running instances. So this is just like what computers are running on it. And assuming you're set up like me with only one, you'll already have the DNS down there. Again, I will walk through this with people if they want hands-on, so I wouldn't stress too much about following this right now, because we still have over an hour of time where I'll be able to sit down and help people walk through it. So there's some gotchas there that we'll need to work through if you're working in the Cloud9 environment. But it is still going to be a pretty nice streamlined process after that. That's should really be probably the only gotcha you need to deal with. And once we get this on your system, what I would recommend you do is probably just bookmark this so that you don't have to try and remember this long address. You probably just want to bookmark that, put it down here, because your EC2 public DNS name I believe it shouldn't change. I can't confirm that. it doesn't give it a different one, but I think it shouldn't change over time. It should be the same. But this is really the point I want to get everybody to, right? I know this is like maybe underwhelming, but I want everybody to be able to at least have this much running, because that sort of shows that you were able to spin up a basic React application using this Create React app. And then if you want to, there's some other steps, things that we can do as well. So here we have it running that way, but there's a couple other NPM commands that exist that we can also use and test with. So if I go into this project, and if I did npm run, this is just going to list what commands are available. And you'll see we have the start one, which is what we already used. And then I should zoom in a little bit again. Oops, not there. Over here. There we go. We have a start command. We also have a test command. And so I will do that real fast. npm test. And this will run the tests. Like, if you remember, we talked about test-driven development and unit tests and all of that. There's already some tests written for this Create React App project that we're spinning up. And this is just a quick way to make sure that those, like, since this whole thing is self-contained, it should pass. And so I fired that up. I hit A to run all the tests, and the one test that there is passed. So that's just another bit of validation you can do if you want to when you've got your Create React App application running, to verify that it should be working as expected. So this took a lot longer than I thought because of those challenges that we had with the Cloud9 AWS environment. But other than that, it's a pretty simple process to get going. Let me check real fast to see if there's any Slack questions I need to answer before I end the video. And I appreciate you helping out there too. So I don't think I'm going to be able to answer this on the video, or it's generally useful. So I think what we'll do now is I'll probably end this stream and then help people hands-on to make sure everyone's able to get this. So I sort of want to go around and make sure that I get to see this spinning React icon on everyone's laptop. If you're already there, you know, just throw your hand up. Let me stop by, see that it's there, and then if you want to head out, you can. Otherwise, I want to just make sure that we're all there before we're done for today. And I'll see people on the video on Saturday, where we'll do a really deep dive into JSX and working with the start of React components.